The Pelis Forest in Hungary lies silent on this autumn afternoon. Golden and reddish leaves cover the ground like a royal carpet. Among the ancient trees, a group of hunters moves cautiously. At the front, a woman of proud beauty, dressed in fine garments embroidered with gold thread, holds the reins of her horse. She is Gertrude of Morania, Queen Consort of Hungary, wife of King Andrew II, and regent during her husband's absence. Proud of her Germanic lineage, she secretly despises the Hungarian nobles accompanying her, rough men whom she considers inferior to her Bavarian relatives. What the queen doesn't know is that, hidden among the trees, eyes watch her with hatred. Swords are silently unsheathed. The plan, months in the making, is about to be executed. Within minutes, the Pelis Forest will witness one of the most shocking assassinations in European medieval history. And what will happen to the queen's body in the following hours will add an even deeper layer of horror to an already bloody tale. But who was Gertrude of Morania? And how did she come to this fatal moment? To understand this queen's brutal fate, we must travel back in time and learn her story. Gertrude was born around 1185, daughter of the Bavarian Count Berthold IV of Andechs, Margrave of Carniola and Istria, who had been elevated to the title of Duke of Morania by Emperor Frederick Barbarossa. Raised in an ambitious and influential family, Gertrude had equally well-positioned sisters, Agnes, who became Queen of France by marrying King Philip II, and Hedwig, later canonized as Saint Hedwig of Silesia, wife of Duke Henry I of Silesia. Like many young noble women of her time, Gertrude was used as a pawn in political alliances. Before 1203, she married Andrew, the Arpad prince and youngest son of the late King Bela III of Hungary. This marriage involved Andrew in conflicts over the German throne, aligning him with his father-in-law in supporting Duke Philip of Swabia, while Andrew's older brother, King Emmerich of Hungary, supported King Otto IV of Germany. Andrew and Gertrude's path to the Hungarian throne was not smooth. In 1203, Andrew rebelled against his brother Emmerich, attempting to usurp the throne. The rebellion failed, and Andrew was imprisoned. Gertrude then had to seek refuge in her father's house. The couple's fortune would change rapidly. In 1204, King Emmerich died, leaving his young son, Ladislaus III, as heir. The following year, the young king also met with a sudden death. Freed, Andrew was proclaimed King of Hungary, and Gertrude became Queen Consort. According to many historians, the real problem began with Gertrude's rise to power. She was an ambitious and influential woman who did not limit herself to the traditional role of a queen consort. During her husband's frequent absences on military campaigns, Gertrude assumed regency of the kingdom. As described by a chronicler of the time, Dietrich of Apolda, she conducted the affairs of the kingdom like a man. A description that, in that context, was not a compliment but an accusation of usurping male roles. Gertrude committed what was perhaps her gravest error, openly favoring her German relatives and courtiers, granting them lands, titles, and privileges to the detriment of the Hungarian nobility. Her younger brother Berthold was appointed Archbishop of Kalocsa in 1206, and in 1212, he also received the title of Voivode, Governor of Transylvania, positions of immense power and prestige that would normally be granted to Hungarian nobles. Contemporary chroniclers suggest that Gertrude went so far as to donate a third of Hungarian territory to her foreign favorites, an exaggeration, probably, but indicative of the resentment her actions generated. To the Hungarian magnates, the German queen was not merely a foreigner but a traitor who plundered the kingdom to benefit her own people. Resentment fermented for years until, in 1213, a group of nobles led by a lord named Peter, son of Tor, decided it was time to eliminate the queen. They needed only an opportunity, which arose when King Andrew II departed for a military campaign in Galicia. On the fateful afternoon of September 28, 1213, while Gertrude was hunting in the Pelis Forest, accompanied by her brother Berthold and her guest, Duke Leopold VI of Austria, the conspirators put their plan into action. The exact details of the attack vary according to sources, but the result is indisputable. The queen was brutally murdered, her body mutilated by the attackers. Berthold and Duke Leopold barely escaped with their lives. What happened afterward to the queen's body is where history and legend blend into a macabre narrative. According to popular accounts that emerged in the following decades, The conspirators, in their hatred for the foreign queen, not only murdered her but also subjected her corpse to a final symbolic indignity. After dismembering the body, they are said to have left it in an isolated area of the forest, where a sounder of wild boars, animals considered unclean by many cultures, devoured the flesh of the once proud Queen of Hungary. This narrative, though not confirmed by primary sources of the time, became part of the legend surrounding Gertrude's assassination. Symbolically, being devoured by pigs represented the denial not only of a dignified burial but of the Queen's very humanity. In a medieval Christian society, where the preservation of the body for resurrection was considered important, this alleged fate added a spiritual dimension to earthly vengeance. Officially, however, records indicate that Gertrude was buried in the Cistercian Abbey of Pelis, near the site of her assassination. If any desecration of her body occurred before the official burial, it was not documented by contemporary chroniclers, possibly to avoid further provoking King Andrew II's wrath upon his return from campaign. Gertrude's murder caused shock and consternation throughout Europe, not only because of the act's brutality, but because regicide, even against a queen consort, was considered a crime not just against the royal person but against the divine order that monarchs supposedly represented. When Andrew II returned and discovered what had happened to his wife, his reaction was one of fury. He punished some of the conspirators, but curiously, many escaped severe punishment. This has led some historians to speculate whether the king himself might have been secretly satisfied with the elimination of a wife whose influence and ambition had perhaps become troublesome even to him. Gertrude of Morania's legacy transcends her tragic end. She left 5 children who would play significant roles in European history: Bela, who would become King Bela IV of Hungary; Elizabeth, who would be canonized as Saint Elizabeth of Hungary; Koloman, future King of Galicia; Andrew, Prince of Halych; and Maria, who would become Tsarina of Bulgaria by marrying Ivan Asen II. More than 600 years after her death, Gertrude's story would gain new life through art. In 1819, Hungarian playwright Joseph Katona wrote Bank Ban, a play loosely based on the Queen's assassination. In the work, which would become a fundamental part of the Hungarian literary canon, Gertrude, called Gertrudis, is portrayed as a tyrannical regent who exploits the Hungarian people, living in luxury while the natives suffer. Her assassination occurs at the hands of the noble Bank Ban, after he discovers that the Queen's brother, Otto, raped his wife, Melinda, with Gertrude's tacit approval. In 1861, the story gained even more prominence when composer Ferenc Erkel transformed the play into an opera, also titled Bank Ban, which became a symbol of Hungarian nationalism during the period when the country was under Habsburg rule. Through these artistic works, Gertrude of Morania was transformed into a symbol of the foreign oppressor, and her assassination into an act of patriotic resistance. The fictionalized narrative presented by Katona and Erkel diverges significantly from historical reality. There is no concrete evidence that Gertrude was a particularly oppressive or cruel regent. Nor is there proof that her brother raped any nobleman's wife, or that Bank Ban, who was a real person, was the Queen's assassin. The rape story seems to have been a later addition, possibly created to provide a more personal and emotional justification for the assassination beyond political resentment. What we know with certainty is that Gertrude of Morania paid a terrible price for her ethnic favoritism and political ambition in an era when women were expected to remain in the background of power. Her assassination represents one of the first major clashes between Germanic aspirations and Hungarian nationalism, a conflict that would resurface repeatedly throughout Central European history. Gertrude's story, both the real and the fictionalized versions, continues to fascinate because it touches on universal themes: the danger of power exercised without cultural sensitivity, resentment against foreign influences, and the limits of what a society will tolerate from its rulers, especially when they are viewed as other. The final fate of her body, whether devoured by pigs or not, remains uncertain. But what is certain is that the assassination of Gertrude of Morania on September 28, 1213, in the Pelis Forest was a pivotal moment in Hungarian history, a crime so shocking that 8 centuries later, it still resonates in our collective imagination. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this story is not the assassination itself, but the ease with which a person, even a queen, can be dehumanized when viewed as a threat to the status quo. The transformation of Gertrude from a woman of flesh and blood into a symbol of foreign oppression, deserving not only of death but of final degradation, reflects a pattern that has unfortunately repeated throughout human history, from antiquity to modern times. When we visit today the region where Gertrude met her end, the Pelis Forest, north of Budapest, we can contemplate the ruins of the abbey where her body was officially buried. The silence of the place contrasts with the violence that marked her final moments. Whatever the truth about the fate of her mortal remains, the story of Gertrude of Morania remains a somber reminder of the dangers of power and the price often paid for challenging the conventions of one's time.